I be happy. May I be well. May I be safe. May I be peaceful and at ease. Friends, this is the Formless Podcast number 56 with Tyler, the superhuman, and me, Dustin.
Good morning.
Morning. What's happening today?
Well, we just got done doing a really good
Saturday morning workout.
Yeah, and Saturday morning class.
That class is awesome. That's a great class. Sensei Mark teaching that has been fun.
Really fun. Yeah, really enjoy those Saturday morning classes, and they're early in the morning, and it's you kind of really see, it's just a different flavor.
Well, it's a different flavor, but I like that, we warm up, and then we sit down and we talk. And we talk about different thoughts and ideas and different... Philosophy is not the right word, but maybe theory, I guess.
Theory,
Yeah. But it's really cool. And last week's was great. This week's was good too. But last week's where we were talking about
making your bed every morning.
Making your bed every morning. But that automatic response, that flow state, that thing where you're just happening. You're not there's no planning, there's no conscious effort. It just happens.
It just happens. Like you were saying, it's when you're swimming, you're not thinking right hand over left hand, kick with the foot. You just do it.
Do it. Yeah, because if you do that, you drowned. Harinder Singh talks a lot about the flow state and getting into that space where things are happening and he's talked about it a number of different times on his podcast and trying to get to that state where you're in the moment, you're flowing, there's no thoughts to interrupt that process. And he's got a whole bunch of different methodologies or ways to get there. And he's working on that. And it's really interesting to listen to on the Black Belt podcast. If you ever get a chance, it's really interesting. I've met that guy. I know you've met him.
That's
before.
what I was going to say. You went to the Martial Arts Super Show.
I went to the Super Show. You went a couple of years before I did.
I went in 2019.
Yeah, and I did 21 or 22 right after COVID, right when they opened it back up. But that was an amazing experience. Rumor has it they're going to do it again this year. So if I could get that to go to that one again, that'd be so amazing. Cool. Yeah. The flow state, that whole thing where things are just happening and you don't have to plan it out. There's an analogy. When I did some competitive shooting, and if you've never gotten the chance to do it, it's super fun. It's I think it's the USPCA. US. It's the United States Competitive Pistol Association or something like that. So you have a pistol, you've got a bunch of targets, and you have somebody behind you with a timer. And it makes this loud beep sound, and then you go, and you might have 10 targets or 15 targets or whatever. And you have to do certain things and shoot different angles and targets and stuff. But first time I did it, of course, I was terrible. I missed half the targets. You lose time. They add time to your score because it's a timed course. They add time to your score for every missed target or every wrong target. You might have two different targets. You're supposed to shoot one but not the other. Or some targets you have to shoot twice or 3 times, and some targets you shoot once. Break the rules, you add time to your score. This old guy comes up to me after I go through the first course, and he's like, listen, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. And I was like, what the heck kind of new age hippie stuff is this? And he kind of saw my confusion on my face. My wife likes to say my face says more than I do. I make faces a lot, apparently. But anyway, he kind of broke it down for me. He's like, listen, if you do every action deliberately and slowly, like when you go to reload, boom, everything it adds up and it takes time. He goes, you have to think about it to the point where you're not thinking about it, which is contradictory or dichotomy, however you want to look at it. But you think about every action you do, and you do it deliberately, slowly, and smoothly, it it adds up, and it goes a lot faster than what you intend to happen. Like it really worked. It got my time way down. But the first few times it was really awkward and getting used to all of this stuff, and then you'd start flowing and everything's going really good and you're doing everything, and then you start thinking about how good you're doing, right? Or like, oh man, this is awesome. I'm just superstar at this. Or you mess up and then you like stumble on the fact that you messed up back here instead of like, what's the next step? Just move on.
Stuck in the past.
Yeah. And it was a really awesome thing. And I only did it for about a year and a half or so. But then from that, I transitioned into going back to martial arts. And applying that to this, there's not a lot of difference there. I mean, shooting guns is one thing, and there's all sorts of safety things, to go over. But under the timer, trying to be quick about it and trying to be deliberate in your actions and not waste any motions or any actions. You're not trying to do anything that's wasteful, right? Everything is a deliberate action. So every step you take, every time you get ready and point the gun, everything is this planned thing. I'm doing this. I'm going to do this. And then with like martial arts and sparring and stuff, the more you think about what you're going to do, the more you're going to get punched, right? Like if I'm squaring off with you and I'm like, okay, now I'm going to fake at his head and then hit him in the ribs. You've already hit me like 4 times.
Right. Yeah.
So there's this thing where like you have a plan, but you don't have a plan. You have and then it kind of flips it on its ear. Now it's like, okay, I don't even have a plan. When I go to spar, there's no plan. There's just opportunities.
Yep.
And I'm just looking for an opportunity and I'm acting on that opportunity. And trying not to scramble the picture. You know what I mean? Like just get in there and do the thing.
You just get in there and you jump in the pool and you start swimming.
Exactly. You don't plan on like how you're going to I'm going to butterfly stroke once I dive in. You just go. I don't know. I'm not a very good swimmer, but that might be a poor analogy.
I didn't. The same thing you talk about shooting. I grew up shooting BB guns, 22. Got older, got a little bit bigger, and I don't ever really remember. Maybe I took hunter safety. I did take hunter safety course in 8th grade, but I don't remember ever really being told, okay, you need to practice shouldering your gun and then getting your cheek weld on the stock and then looking at and squeezing the trigger.
Lining up the sights.
And that's all part of it. You have to know that. I don't remember learning those individually, maybe a piece here and a piece there, but I just shot. Like I just picked up a gun and started shooting, right?
Yeah.
And I was a pretty good shot. And then I joined the Army. I was a fantastic shot in the Army. Never shot expert, but I always shot, expert would be a 36 out of 40 targets. At the time I was in, if you shot 36 out of 40 targets at varying ranges from 50 yards or 50 meters to 300 meters. And so you had 40 shots and different, a silhouette plastic soldier target would pop up and you'd shoot it and it would go down. And so I did, and I just would shoot. I just shoot and I did good. And but a couple of years ago, back in like 2015, 2016, I started really getting into reading the theory of rifle craft and shooting and all these little elements. And I started going out and I started dissecting everything I did. And for a while, it was almost like a step back for me, like, because I was just so used to shooting and most of the time hitting my target. And I dissected everything. And for a while, I became not a very good shot. And I would hesitate.
You like regressed?
Yeah, I regressed a lot. And I would hesitate and I wouldn't, I'd be like, oh, is my stance right? Oh, am I shouldering the gun right? Where's my cheek weld? Where's my breathing? And where's my trigger?
You're focused on all these little pieces.
Rather than hitting the target, because it's all for nothing if you don't hit the target.
Yeah.
It's all for nothing.
Not to interrupt you.
No,
go ahead and finish your thought.
And so And the more I kept, and I was like, no, I gotta practice on my trigger squeeze. I've got to practice on, focusing on the front sight and not the target, not the rear sight, not the front sight, or not the target, unless you're doing like some sort of reactive shooting, but for hunting purposes, right? And I kind of kept regressing, just getting worse and worse and worse. And I was like, I'm not on the right path here. This ain't the right thing I'm doing here.
Yeah.
And so a couple days, I was just like, I'm just going to pick up the gun and shoot. And I don't care if I miss. And sure, did I miss the targets or did I miss, the whatever I was shooting at? And so, sure I did, but man, I hit a lot more just shooting consistently than if I was like, okay, for every shot is my, my stance right or my shouldering it right, whatever, my trigger squeeze or pull or press, because you're supposed to pull the trigger or press the trigger or squeeze the trigger based on what you're shooting. As so I've been told. But none of that stuff, I don't think, in the long run hurt me. It just, by me sitting there and trying to dissect all those little points,
and you lose focus of the actual goal,
hitting the target.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like what you're talking about.
No, that exactly. I used to play a lot of guitar, and there's all sorts of different aspects of the guitar, and you do like a string bend, right? And it's to shift the pitch of the note, right? You go higher or lower or add vibrato and make it waver. And
I'm not a musician.
Yeah. So you'd focus on the wrong thing. Instead of just like bending the string and hitting the note, you start focusing on like, can I hit a note a step and a half higher? Can I hit 2 steps higher? Meaning 2 steps of the note 2 steps higher or whatever. And you almost like from my perspective, when I would focus on like trying to hit a specific number or step, whatever the technical term is, I would almost always go off.
Yeah.
As opposed to just like listening to the music that I'm making and feeling it and like bending that string until it felt right. When I would let go of that and just play, you almost couldn't miss. But the minute I was like, oh, I can go, I need to go this high, it would be like, it'd sound like nails on a chalkboard. Because you're like, you know what I mean? Like you take your focus off the end goal and you start getting down into the weeds. And I think, especially beginners in martial arts, we tend to get into the weeds. You work on like a certain thing, you work on a drill or a technique, and then you're trying to apply that technique or that drill to everything you do.
Yeah.
Right? And then you're like, why isn't this working?
Yeah.
Oh, well, this doesn't work because I can't make it work. And you get into that quagmire of like all of the stuff going on upstairs as opposed to just letting go and waiting for the proper time to do it. Does that make sense? Or is that like...
We get caught up in the details.
And I wonder where that comes from. Like somewhere along the line, prehistoric man like was making fire or skinning a deer or building shelter somewhere. And then like somehow, somewhere they got caught up into some detail and didn't accomplish the task. You know what I mean?
I do.
Like I need to hold the stick this way when I run the bow across, or
instead of just rubbing it.
Yeah. They're like focused on the wrong thing, or I need to bang the flint against the steel this way, or the rock this way, instead of like, they focus on the minute detail instead of just doing the task. I believe, and what I've seen with myself mostly and with other people, is I think part of that comes from focusing on the details. Part of it comes from our desire to be perfectionists. Okay. Yeah.
At some point we want to do everything so perfectly that, and it insecurity, we're in ego.
Yeah.
And so, and I think that there's a time and place to focus on the details. You have to, you're damned in the details, right? We have a saying, you're damned in the details. That's not my saying, that's somebody else saying that. But So you've got to focus on the details, but you can't let the details
get in the way.
When I drive my stick shift car, I'm just like, bam, first gear, second gear. I'm just doing it. I'm just flowing from one to the other, hitting that clutch. I've done it so many times now, flicking on the blinkers, flipping on the windshield wipers, maybe playing with the radio, and I'm just not.
You're not like planning each step.
Yeah. And it's just going. But I think that part of it is perfectionism, and whether that's passed down through our, from our genealogy, from our generations above us, maybe that'd be something to ask. I don't know.
That's cool. No, that's a good point.
Perfection and insecurities. I've learned, this is a totally topic for another day, but I've been looking into generational curses and generational things that are passed down through our grandparents, great-grandparents, through our grandparents, to our parents, to us, and what we may pass down to our kids. I don't have kids yet, but one day. And those things can be good or bad. We can pass the good or the bad.
Yeah.
But anyways, that totally different topic. But
that's I just thought of an embarrassing story of myself.
Well, let's hear it.
So a couple of years back, we're all in class, and I didn't realize anybody was watching, but I had been watching old YouTube videos of Benny Urquidez, some of his kickboxing matches, and he was doing this thing which was really awesome. He'd kind of like jab, and then do this spinning back kick where he'd jump in the air, and it wasn't a high kick. It was like right to the solar plexus or to the gut, but he would jump and spin and throw this back kick, right? And I got like enamored with it. I was like, oh man, that's so awesome. And I watched it. I must have watched it for like an hour, like all these different videos of him doing this. Like almost every fight, he was doing this thing. And I'm like, I wonder if I could do that. I'll have to try that tonight. So I go to class. We're doing class, and we have this break. And we got all the punching bags and stuff.
Right.
So we take a water break, and I walk up to a bag and bang, bang, and drill this bag with this back kick, right? And I was like all proud of myself. I didn't think anybody was watching, but there was about 2 or 3 people that were kind of watching, and somebody said, oh man, that was cool. Do that again. And I'm like, oh crap, now I got to do it again.
And you had to think about it.
I had to think about it. And then I was like trying to be impressive, right?
Yeah.
And I missed the whole bag, and like, I don't know if I fell, but I missed the bag, completely missed the bag. Right. And it was one of those things where like, no, I didn't think anybody was watching me. I wasn't trying to impress anybody, and I could do it. But the minute I knew somebody was watching me, and then I was like, my ego gets in the way, and I'm like, I'm going to show them. I'm going to show them how this is done,
How cool I am.
Yeah. And then I fall on my ass. But so many things like that. Like, we talked about the being in that, like, just flowing. If you could stay out of your own way, you can almost stay there. But the minute you think like, or at least from my perspective, the minute I think like, ooh, I'm doing really good, or oh man, that was awesome, I stumble.
Yep.
If I can get out of my own way and shut my brain off for a minute, I can really, when I'm there, really do it and just stay there and be there and not think about anything. Mm-hmm. But the minute I think back about like, oh, you messed that up, or oh, you're doing really good here, keep going, crash, And it's I wonder if that's like a psychology thing or an ego thing, like, you know what I mean? Like, because if when you're there, if you had the consciousness to like stay there or not stay there, you'd probably choose to stay there, right? Like, if we're sparring and you're flowing and everything's just happening and you're hitting your targets and you're not getting hit and you don't have to think about it. If you had that conscious choice to stay there, you would choose to stay there. But you can't stay there.
Right.
Because something happens. You get distracted, you get hit, you stumble. Something happens and your brain kind of like It's like, oh, I need to take back over. Like,
wow.
we're messing up, so let me take over, and now you keep messing up.
And it's almost, in some respects, it makes it a lot worse. Obviously, like what we're talking about.
Yeah, but is that like some sort of a safety mechanism that's wired into all of us? Where, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like it's a constant battle between my brain overthinking stuff and my body just doing it.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. That is a wonderful observation. And our brain is such a great tool. And sometimes it gets in the way.
Well, I when I'm teaching, I always say, like, the biggest tool that you have, or the most dangerous tool you have, is not your feet or your fists. It's what you got up here. Because if you can think it, you can do it, and your brain is what's going to make you go, like, okay, look around for danger, or, oh, step on this guy's foot, punch him in the nose, or, you can think devious thoughts. You know what I mean? Like, if we're sparring and I see something, I can act on it, or I can be like, oh, they're not going to think about this. Here's a mean trick, and here's an elbow to the ribs, or whatever.
Yeah.
But if you let that brain, like, take over, your brain's like, wait a minute, we got to plan this out. We got to think about this. We got to do this. We got to make them do that. We got to blah, 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 blah. And you get, like, caught up in all of this static, right? Like, there's just too much. Your brain's a great computer, but it can't, like, it's trying to
process.
And that processing power sometimes is lacking.
Yeah.
When your adrenaline's up.
Yeah. Well, it's like Bruce Lee said in one of his books, I think it was the Tao of Jeet Kune Do. You see something with your eyes, and that's the first stage. You see what actually happens. So I see your foot on the ground, and then I'm like, okay. Then my brain says, oh, that's his foot on the ground.
Yeah.
Like, you see it for what it is.
And the brain, like, confirms everything.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, that's his foot on the ground. Then you say, oh, what do I want to do? Oh, I want to. Then that's another second, split second, milliseconds. Then you say, oh, I want to step on it. Then you say, okay, and then your brain sends the message to your foot that says, step on it. Then your foot says, oh, I've just received this message. Now I've got to start.
Exactly.
Now I've got to go. But there's all these, like, like these, it's like connect the dots. When you were a kid, connect the dots. And it takes time
to make that picture.
To make that picture. And you sometimes just don't have time. And like, where the level we're at and still going towards is getting that where it's just like you see a target and you just hit it. Bam,
it just happens.
It just happens. And that's the flow state.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't they write it? Isn't there a book on that? Something called Flow?
I'm sure there is.
I haven't read it, but that would be a good one to read.
I believe I know what you're talking about. But yeah, that would be something that maybe we could get it and review it.
We need to get Sensei Montgomery, who taught today's Saturday class. We need to get him in and ask him about the brain.
Oh yeah,
and like how the brain as a tool. But sometimes I don't grab a wrench when I need to burn some blackberry bushes.
yeah, exactly.
I grab the blowtorch, right? But when I need to fix my car, I don't grab the blowtorch or grab the wrench. And so sometimes the brain is just not. It tries to get in the way where it's not needed at the time.
Yeah, I almost feel like there's, like, normally the brain's in control of everything. Like, the brain's like kind of the general telling everybody the orders,
right? Right.
But sometimes the brain takes a backseat to intuition or into instinct, and then there's like this battle between the two in your head. Like, oh no, wait, I'm in charge. No, I'm in charge. And then in the meantime, like, you're getting thumped.
Oh yeah. That was with Sensei Montgomery. I'll never forget that one night. I think I've talked about it before. We were over in that corner over there, and I was a brown belt. And
yeah.
And Sensei Montgomery, I think, was a red or somewhere around green. And I'm sitting there, and we're circling, and he's punching me, and I'm more worried about my stance, my middle stance.
Yeah, like what you're doing. And
how am I holding my hands up and while he's punching me? And I'm like, wow, this is worthless. Like, yeah, I've got a good stance, but
I'm getting drilled.
I'm getting drilled. So what's the point of having a perfect stance? So that's just one of those things you look back on, and you're like, okay, learning lesson there. And that's where the brain comes in, because then you can say, oh, that was a learning lesson. The classroom where we learn math, physics, whatever, that's where you need your brain. But you have time in the classroom. You have time to sit there and learn and think and write down and sit there and rest your head on your hand and dissect something. But out on the sparring mats.
And I wonder if that's where the holdup is, because we spend so much of our life using our brain to learn how to do things, learn how to read or whatever, that your brain's like, I'm in charge. I'm the guy to go to, we're going to do it this way. And then like you get out into something more abstract, like driving a car or sparring or whatever the case may be. And then your brain's like, well, I've been in charge all this other time. Why aren't I in charge now?
Gets all jealous. And muscles its way in.
Yeah.
Mine does that.
For sure. Oh.
But yeah, that's definitely something I've been incorporating into my sparring and just my life. We've talked about this before. We're constantly changing and becoming better people and refining. And I've been experimenting with not worrying about my stance so much as how am I comfortable sparring. Am I comfortable with my body a little bit more, like our stance is, very
very squared up,
like a boxer stance. Our hands are in a little bit different position, but we're very squared up so that we can use our left and right hand. We're not completely sideways, where our left hand's forward and our left foot's forward. And we've only got the use of those two, really. We've got both. But now I'm kind of blading myself a little bit more. I might left hand forward, left foot forward, but I'm turned a little bit more to my right. And it's just like, how am I comfortable?
Yeah.
And if I can get there, and then sometimes I'll spar that way, and then I'll find myself, I'll spar, get out, and I'll be like, oh, wait, I'm now back to my frontal stance. So it's almost like I'm shifting my stance in the middle of my sparring without even thinking about it.
Yeah. I think it's, you always want to have your hands up. You always want to try and protect yourself. Golden rules. But I think it's really important to be comfortable and fluid. At least that's what I'm thinking right now. Tomorrow could be a whole nother story. I might be thinking about something else. But I think, like some of the drills we were working on today, Mark was talking about being comfortable. Being where you could throw a punch or a kick or go in close and grab and maybe throw, but you have to find yourself in a position where you're able to execute those things, right? And if you're too far away and you're trying to go in for like a takedown or whatever, you're going to eat a punch or a kick because you're not in the proper position. So in order for you to find that proper spot, like you need to be comfortable with where you are positioned, right? I feel like I'm kind of going into the mud there.
No, that's good.
Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. You got to be comfortable.
Yeah,
if your car ain't comfortable to drive in, man, you're not going to want to drive that car. You're not going to want to sit in it anymore,
exactly.
Yeah. So, I mean, if a classroom is freezing cold, well, you ain't going to be able to do math in that classroom. You're focused
on being cold.
Yeah, you're going to be focused on being cold. So,
that's awesome.
But, we teach the way our art is, and most arts that I've seen teach, okay, this is your starting position. That's why ours is called middle stance, because everything can be thrown from that stance, and you can also adapt it a little bit from there. Or even throw it out if you wanted to, just completely throw it out. But yeah, I'm getting to that point. So like a new white belt that comes into the dojo, I get it. You have to teach them the basics.
Those fundamentals.
Fundamentals. This is how you stand and this is how you hold your hands. And I look back at how I held my hands when I was a white belt in this art, and I'm like, okay, that was good for then. I needed that then. I had to have that. Now we're a little bit different, and now
I need this something else.
Which then leads to comfort, which leads to then the flow state. Because then if you're comfortable, you can flow and get in there and do your thing, without overthinking it.
Hopefully. Oh man. Yeah, I don't know.
That about covers it.
I think that about covers it. Hey, real quick, I got a shout out to Kung Fu Conversations podcast. They shouted us out a while back. They're really great guys. They have some really interesting guests. They've got. I think they started very close to around the same time we did. I don't know that for a fact. They've got about 50-something episodes, just about like where we're at now.
Okay.
Really interesting to listen to those guys. I had a really long conversation with Daryl a couple of weeks back. Really good guy. They practice Wing Chun. They're out of Colorado. Super cool guys. Go give them a listen if you haven't heard them already. Kung Fu Conversations. Good people. We've got our website up and working. Got our stickers
awesome.
up. I guess this is the commercial portion of our podcast. Yeah. Oh, also, Super Tom got bored at home yesterday, and we filmed a little commercial. I put it on Instagram and YouTube and Facebook. If you haven't seen it yet, go out and listen to it. It's Tom thought it was funny, so did that. Yeah,
That's good.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, just on our stickers. We have stickers to sell you, by the way. If you're interested in that, make your car more valuable, make your clothes better, make you more attractive to those you wish to be attractive to with that sticker.
That's
website.
Website.
Keep your ears open and your eyes peeled for a seminar, possibly. We're in the planning stages of that. We want to do something and gather some people around that are fans of the show and meet and greet and do some martial arts.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. Friends, thank you very much for following along and listening to us jibber jabber away. Until next time.